My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 25 years old. 5 years ago, I stood outside my parents' house in Spokane, Washington, shivering as snow fell around me, their words cutting deeper than the biting wind. "Don't ever come back here again," they said, their voices cold, final. I was 20, in love with a guy they despised. And that night, I walked away, my boots crunching through the snow, my heart pounding with betrayal. They thought I'd fail, that I'd crawl back begging. But I didn't. That night changed everything, pushed me into a storm, literally and figuratively, where I had to fight to survive. Their rejection was just the start. Lies, heartbreak, and a moment in that blizzard nearly broke me. But I kept going. 5 years later, they wished they hadn't said those words. Stick around to hear how I turned their dismissal into my strength and how they paid the price for pushing me away. If you've ever been betrayed by family, drop a comment below and share your story. Hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey. Growing up in Spokane, Washington, I always felt like I was living in my older brother Marcus's shadow. My parents, Linda Mitchell and Robert Mitchell, ran our middle-class household like a showcase for their ambitions. Mom, with her sharp tongue and endless lists of expectations, wanted me to chase a degree from a prestigious university and marry someone who'd fit her vision of success, a software engineer, an investment banker, someone with a title. Dad, quieter but just as firm, backed her up, his nod signaling agreement. Their dream was clear: a daughter who'd make them proud at neighborhood gatherings, someone to boast about at the country club. But I wasn't that daughter. I was Sarah, the one who didn't fit their mold. My brother, Marcus Mitchell, was their pride and joy. At 28, he had an MBA from Stanford, a position at a tech startup in Seattle, and a fiancé who checked every box on Mom's list. "Marcus has got his priorities straight," Mom would say, her voice warm with approval while I sat across the table, 18 and invisible. Marcus's achievements hung over me like a weight. Every A- I brought home was met with, "Your brother never settled for less than perfect." I'd clench my jaw, staring at my plate, wishing I could disappear. Dad would chime in, "You need to focus, Sarah," as if I wasn't trying. Their words carved a hollow space inside me, a constant reminder that I'd never be enough. High school was my rebellion. I'd slip out to local hangouts, coffee shops, music venues, anywhere I could breathe without their judgment. That's where I met Tyler Brooks. He was 24, a construction worker with calloused hands and a quiet confidence that drew me in. Tyler worked for a local building company, framing houses and talking about his dream of starting his own contracting business. He wasn't the kind of guy Mom and Dad pictured for me. No college degree, no corporate job, but he made me feel alive. We'd sit in his pickup truck parked by Riverfront Park, sharing stories about our lives. With Tyler, I wasn't competing with Marcus. I was just me. When I told Mom about Tyler, her face turned to stone. "A construction worker?" she said, her voice slicing through the air. "You're meant for better than that." Dad didn't say much, but his frown spoke volumes. They'd drag me to dinners with Marcus and his fiancée, pointing out how secure his life was, how I should aim for that. I tried to defend Tyler, explaining he had plans, ambition, but Mom cut me off. "He's beneath you," she snapped, her eyes cold. I felt my face burn, my voice rising as I argued back. But it was pointless. They saw Tyler as a mistake, a detour from their perfect plan for me. Marcus tried to play peacemaker, but it never went far. "They just want what's best," he'd say in private, his tone soft but distant. He'd spent years earning their approval, and I could see he didn't want to risk it. I was on my own, torn between their expectations and what I felt with Tyler. He became my refuge. We'd meet after my shifts at a downtown cafe, talking late into the night, dreaming of a life free from their rules. I started staying out longer, dodging mom's lectures, ignoring dad's disappointed sighs. The more time I spent with Tyler, the more I pulled away from home. But the tension kept building. One evening, I caught mom and dad whispering in the living room. "She's throwing her future away," mom said, her voice low and sharp. "That boy's trouble." Dad murmured something about discipline, his words too soft to catch. I stood in the doorway, my heart pounding, feeling like a stranger in my own home. They didn't trust me, didn't see me as anything but a disappointment. By 20, I was done trying to please them. I wanted a life that was mine, with Tyler, away from their constant criticism. I didn't realize how soon that choice would spark a confrontation that would change everything. Loving Tyler was the first time I dared to live for myself, but my family wouldn't accept it. By 20, I was done fighting to fit into mom and dad's vision of who I should be. Tyler, with his easy smile and dreams of owning a contracting company, felt like my way out. I started spending nights at his small apartment, a modest place in the older part of Spokane. It wasn't much: worn carpets, secondhand furniture, but it felt like freedom. I'd pack a bag, tell mom I was staying with friends, and slip out to be with him. Each time I left, I could feel her disapproval burning through the phone calls I ignored. Dad's silence was just as heavy, his sighs louder than words. Marcus knew something was up. "You're playing with fire, Sarah," he warned one afternoon, his voice low as we sat in his car. He'd caught me sneaking back home at dawn, my hair still messy from a night with Tyler. I shrugged him off, tired of his half-hearted advice. He wouldn't stand up to mom and dad, so what did he know? I was done hiding. One weekend, I made up my mind. I stuffed a duffel bag with clothes, my favorite books, and a few photos, and told Tyler I was moving in. His eyes lit up, and for a moment, I believed we could build something real away from my family's rules. But secrets don't stay buried in Spokane. A neighbor, someone mom knew from her yoga class, saw me carrying boxes into Tyler's place. By dinner that night, the air in our house was thick with tension. Mom stood at the kitchen counter, her knuckles white as she gripped a dish towel. "You're living with that construction worker?" she spat, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Dad sat across from me, his face hard, no longer the soft-spoken man who'd once taken me fishing. "Sarah, is this true?" he asked, his tone low but heavy with accusation. I nodded, my heart racing. There was no point lying anymore. The argument exploded from there. Mom's voice rose, each word a jab. "You're throwing your life away. He's nothing, Sarah, nothing." I pushed back, my own voice shaking. "He's more than you think. You don't even know him." Dad slammed his hand on the table, startling us both. "Enough," he said. "You're embarrassing us." I stared at him, hurt slicing through me. Embarrassing them? That's what this was about. Their reputation, not my happiness. Marcus sat silently, his eyes fixed on his plate, offering no help. I felt cornered, like a stranger in the home I'd grown up in. It was late, the wind howling outside when the fight reached its breaking point. Snow had started falling, thick and relentless, piling up against the windows. Mom pointed at the door, her face twisted with anger. "If you choose him, you're done here. Don't ever come back," she said, her words cold and final. Dad stood behind her, his jaw tight, not saying a word to stop her. I waited for him to speak, to soften her rage, but he didn't. My chest ached, a mix of fury and betrayal. "Fine," I said, my voice barely steady. "I don't need you." I grabbed my duffel bag, still packed from earlier, and stormed to my room for my coat. Marcus followed me, whispering, "Sarah, just apologize. They'll calm down." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "They don't want me, Marcus. They want someone I'm not." He reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I couldn't stay. Not after those words. I walked out the front door, the cold hitting me like a slap. Snow swirled around me, clinging to my hair, my boots sinking into the fresh drifts. I stood on the porch for a moment, staring back at the house, its warm lights mocking me. The loneliness was crushing, heavier than the storm. I turned and started walking, my bag slung over my shoulder toward Tyler's apartment, not knowing what came next. Living with Tyler in his small apartment, I thought I'd found happiness, until everything fell apart. After walking away from my parents' house, I settled into Tyler's place near the industrial district. It was a tiny space, creaky floors, a single window overlooking the alley, but it was ours. I felt lighter, free from Mom and Dad's constant judgment. Tyler would come home smelling of sawdust and fresh lumber, his grin chasing away the ache of that night I left. We'd cook cheap dinners, laugh over burnt pizza, and talk about a future where he'd run his own company. For the first time, I believed I could build a life on my terms. To make ends meet, I took a part-time job at a local bookstore in Spokane, shelving books and helping customers. The pay wasn't much, but I squirreled away every dollar, dreaming of a bigger place for us. Tyler worked long hours on construction sites, often staying late for overtime. "It's for our future," he'd say, kissing my forehead before heading out. I trusted him, believed in the life we were piecing together. My brother Marcus called once, his voice hesitant, asking if I was okay. "I'm fine," I told him, cutting the conversation short. I didn't need his pity or Mom's lectures. I had Tyler, and that was enough. 3 months in, cracks started to show. Tyler began staying out later, checking his phone more than usual. I brushed it off at first, telling myself he was stressed. But then a message popped up on my phone, an anonymous note on Instagram. "Your boyfriend's not who you think," it read, with just enough detail about Tyler's late nights to make my stomach twist. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Who sent this? A jealous coworker? A nosy neighbor? I didn't know, but doubt took root, gnawing at me. I started noticing things. Tyler would step outside to take calls, his voice low, too quiet to hear. He'd leave his jacket on the couch, and once I found a receipt for a restaurant we'd never been to, dated for a night he claimed he was working. My mind raced, piecing together moments I'd ignored, his quick excuses, the way he avoided my eyes when I asked about his day. I felt sick, like the ground was slipping beneath me. I'd given up everything for him, my family, my home, and now this. I needed answers, but part of me dreaded what I'd find. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. Tyler came home late, his hair messy, a faint smell of perfume clinging to his shirt. I stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, my voice steady despite the shaking inside. "Who are you with tonight?" I asked. His eyes flickered, surprised, but he laughed it off. "Just the crew from the site," he said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. I pressed harder, mentioning the message, the receipt, the calls. His face hardened, his voice sharp. "You're being paranoid, Sarah. I'm not doing anything. Ming." But his words felt hollow, his defensiveness a confession of its own. "I'm done," I said, my voice low. Tyler stared, his mouth opening to argue, but I cut him off. "I trusted you. I gave up everything for you." He reached for me, muttering excuses, but I stepped back. I couldn't stay in that apartment, surrounded by the life I thought we'd have. I grabbed my duffel bag, the same one I'd carried out of my parents' house, threw in my clothes, and walked out. Tyler called after me, his voice fading as I shut the door. The street outside was quiet, the cold seeping through my jacket. I had nowhere to go, no plan, just the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I'd lost my family, and now Tyler. I was alone again. That winter in Spokane was colder than any I'd ever known. After walking out on Tyler, I was alone, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, the weight of betrayal heavier than the clothes inside. I had no home, no family, no plan. The streets were slick with ice, wind howling as snow buried the sidewalks. I needed a place to stay, somewhere to rebuild, but my savings from the bookstore were meager. I trudged through the storm, my breath fogging in the air, aiming for a cheap motel I'd heard about downtown. Each step felt heavier, the cold seeping into my bones, my mind racing with questions. Where would I go? How would I survive? The motel was farther than I thought. By the time I reached the bus station on Riverside Avenue, the storm had worsened, visibility down to nothing. The station was a small, dimly lit shelter, its benches empty except for a couple of stranded travelers. My fingers numb, I sank onto a bench, the hum of the heater barely cutting through the chill. I only had enough money left to rent a motel room for a few days after paying for food and bus fare. My options were running out, and panic crept in, sharp and unyielding. I'd left my parents' house, walked away from Tyler, and now I was stuck with nowhere to turn. Desperate, I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed my parents' number, the screen's dim light flickering in the dark. Maybe they'd softened. Maybe they'd let me come home, just for a night. Mom answered, her voice clipped. "What do you want, Sarah?" I swallowed, my throat tight. "I'm stuck, Mom. It's bad out here. Can I?" She cut me off. "Don't come back here. You made your choice." Her words echoed the night they'd kicked me out, each syllable a fresh wound. I tried Dad next, hoping he'd be kinder. "Sarah, you heard your mother," he said, his tone flat. "Don't call again." The call ended, and I stared at the phone, the cold screen mocking me, feeling smaller than ever. The storm raged outside, snow piling against the station's glass doors. I sank back onto the bench, my bag at my feet, the weight of their rejection crushing me. I'd lost Tyler, my family, everything. The other travelers avoided my gaze, their own worries keeping them distant. I pulled my coat tighter, trying to hold myself together, but the loneliness was suffocating. I didn't know how long I sat there, minutes or hours, the storm's roar drowning out my thoughts. I was on the edge of giving up, wondering if I'd freeze out there if I tried to walk again. Then a voice broke through. "You okay, miss?" I looked up to see a woman in a bus driver's uniform, her badge reading Patricia Reynolds. She was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and compassionate eyes. I shook my head, unable to speak. She glanced at the storm outside, then back at me. "You can't stay here all night. Station closes soon." I mumbled something about not having anywhere to go, my voice barely audible. Patricia didn't pry. Instead, she grabbed her keys. "Come on," she said. "I'm done with my shift. I'll get you somewhere safe." I hesitated, wary, but her steady demeanor put me at ease. I followed her to her bus parked just outside, the engine still warm. The snow was relentless, but Patricia navigated the empty streets with care, driving me to a small inn on the edge of town. "They've got rooms, affordable ones," she said, looking at me. "Get yourself settled. You look like you need a break. We all do sometimes." I thanked her, my voice cracking, and stepped out into the storm. The inn's neon sign was a faint glow through the snow. Patricia's bus pulled away, and I stood there, a flicker of hope cutting through the cold. After that night in the blizzard, I knew I had to start over, relying on no one but myself. The inn Patricia dropped me at was a lifeline, but it wasn't a home. I had a few hundred from my bookstore job, barely enough for a week's rent. I needed a plan, a way to stand on my own after losing my family and Tyler. The weight of those betrayals lingered, but I couldn't let it pull me under. I had to keep moving, prove I could survive without them. I reached out to Jessica Chen, my best friend from high school. Jessica was working as a dental hygienist, making ends meet, but always ready to help. I texted her from my phone, my fingers still shaky from the cold. "Sarah, where are you?" she replied, her worry clear even in text. I told her everything: my parents' rejection, Tyler's betrayal, the storm. She didn't hesitate. "Come to my place," she texted back. "We'll figure it out." By the next day, I was at her apartment, a cozy one-bedroom filled with plants and thrifted furniture. Jessica handed me a coffee and an envelope of cash, maybe $300. "It's not much, but it's yours," she said. I tried to refuse, but she insisted, her eyes fierce. "You're not alone, okay?" With Jessica's help, I found a studio apartment in the Hilliard neighborhood, a cramped space with old wallpaper and a temperamental heater. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The rent ate up most of my savings, so I kept my job at the bookstore, picking up extra shifts to cover bills. The work was grueling. Long hours, difficult customers, but it kept me afloat. Jessica stopped by often, bringing takeout or dragging me to a diner when I looked too worn out. "You're tougher than you think," she'd say, her smile pulling me back from the edge. Her belief in me was a spark, something to hold on to when doubt crept in. I wanted more than just survival. I'd always been good with organization and details, so I enrolled in an evening business administration course at Spokane Community College. The classes were tough, balancing work and study, but they gave me purpose. I'd sit in the library after class, poring over textbooks, imagining a future where I didn't have to count pennies. The instructor, a no-nonsense woman with years of corporate experience, noticed my effort. "You've got real potential, Sarah," she said one night, handing back a graded assignment with a rare smile. Those words stuck with me, a reminder I could be more than my parents' disappointment or Tyler's cast-off. Then, Marcus texted me. A letter arrived at my apartment first, his handwriting familiar on the envelope. "I'm sorry for how things went," he wrote, his words careful but sincere. He'd tucked $100 inside, saying it was from his own savings, not mom or dad's. "You don't need them. You're stronger than you know." A week later, my phone buzzed with his number. "I want to help, Sarah," he said, his voice soft. No strings. I thanked him but kept my guard up. I wasn't ready to trust family again, not after mom and dad's words still echoed in my head. I used his money for groceries, but I didn't reply to his texts much. I needed distance, time to build something that was mine alone. Days turned into weeks, then months. I'd wake early, work my shift, attend class, and collapse into bed, exhausted but driven. Jessica was my rock, cheering me on when I doubted myself. One night, over Thai food at her place, she raised a glass of wine. "To you, Sarah," she said. "You're doing this." I smiled. A real one, for the first time in months. I wasn't whole yet. The scars from my parents' rejection and Tyler's betrayal ran deep. But I was moving forward. My apartment, my job, my classes. They were small victories, proof I could rebuild without leaning on anyone who'd hurt me. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I was learning to trust myself. One hard-won step at a time. 5 years later, I looked back at how far I'd come without needing them. I wasn't the broken girl who'd walked out of Tyler's apartment or sat shivering in that bus station. I'd built a life, one I could be proud of. After finishing my business administration program, I landed a position at a marketing firm in Spokane, managing campaigns for regional clients. My office had a window view of the city, a reminder of what I'd overcome. I shared a beautiful townhouse with Nathan Parker, an elementary school teacher I met at a community event. Nathan was kind, patient, his humor a balm to old wounds. We'd cook dinner together, plan camping trips in the mountains, and talk about dreams that felt within reach. For the first time, I felt secure. Not just surviving, but thriving. My parents, Linda and Robert, didn't fare as well. Marcus texted me one spring, his message cautious but urgent. "Mom and Dad want to see you," he wrote. "They're sorry." I stared at my phone, the words stirring a mix of anger and indifference. Sorry? After they'd thrown me out, told me never to come back? I remembered Mom's cold voice, Dad's flat dismissal in that blizzard. Marcus sent a letter next, relaying their plea for a meeting, saying they missed me. I didn't reply. When he called, I kept it short. "They made their choice, Marcus," I said, my voice firm. "They don't get to undo it." I'd spent years rebuilding without them, and I wasn't about to let their guilt pull me back. They'd lost their daughter for good, left with only regret and an empty house. Tyler's life unraveled too. I heard through Jessica that his dream of starting a contracting company had collapsed. He'd taken out loans, but the business tanked within a year. Bad decisions, worse luck. He was alone now, living in a rundown rental, no family, no close friends to lean on. Jessica said he'd asked about me once, his voice heavy with remorse. But I'd blocked his number long ago. He couldn't reach me, and I wanted it that way. His betrayal had cut deep, but it also pushed me to stand on my own. While I moved forward, Tyler was stuck, haunted by what he'd thrown away. His regret was his own to carry, not mine to fix. Looking back, that blizzard night changed me forever. But I didn't regret walking away. I'd been a girl desperate for approval, clinging to a family who judged me, a boyfriend who lied. Leaving them was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it set me free. Every step, shelving books, studying late, scraping by in that tiny apartment, built the woman I'd become. I learned to value myself, not seek validation from people who'd never see my worth. Mom and Dad's rejection, Tyler's betrayal, they were painful, but they taught me I didn't need them. I had Nathan, Jessica, and my own resilience. My life was proof that choosing myself was worth it, no matter the cost. The biggest lesson I carried was this: protect your worth. Don't beg for love from people who can't give it. My parents chose pride over their daughter, and now they live with silence. Tyler chose fleeting distractions, and he ended up with nothing. I chose me, and I built a life I loved. Independence wasn't easy. It meant long nights, empty bank accounts, and moments of doubt. But it was better than clinging to a toxic family or a faithless partner. Walking away took courage, but it gave me strength I didn't know I had. To anyone listening, know this: you don't need to hold on to people who hurt you. Build your own path. Even if it's lonely at first, it's worth it. Thank you for staying with my story until the end. It means the world to share this journey with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? What lessons have you learned from walking away or standing up for yourself? Share them with me, with others. Your voice matters, just like mine did when I chose to start over.